Good morning. This is President Ann Diener. Donald Trump is legally and lawfully deposed since August 8th of 2017, and we did get them to admit finally that they stole 2016, and that caused them to cave on the bankruptcy. Now we're trying to get them to cave on the war on terrorism and to finally get our war crimes tribunal on TV. And it was found out basically that Dick Cheney has been using the War Powers Act illegally. Technically, they based a lot on Stevenson cartel and Stevenson in the headset. And it was found out that they entered in an issue with my car. And they basically said that it was a moving violation. I should have, to be clear about it, I want to read the exact statement. Basically, what happened was I encouraged us to actually fight the terrorists that were going into Syria. And Trump back then did want to win. And we all wanted to win. Everyone wanted to win. But at that time, the Bush Doctrine was in power or whatever. Even though Trump stole election 2016, he stole election 2016 using cross-check, micro-targeting, and Diebold. And it is a felony to steal an election in every voter's mind. We expect our votes to be counted, and they expect the Bush Doctrine to continue. And we expect a real campaign this election season. So here's what they did. My car was struck for 3 weeks. It was not just one time, it was struck for 3 weeks. It would have been one thing for them to just strike my car for outing these terrorists. I verified and validated what Gordon Duff had said. And I found the terrorists online. If you find the terrorists that, in your opinion, are harmful to Syria, you expect our armed forces to go after them. And that was my goal. So then what happened? What happened after I found those terrorists? My car was hit with the directed energy weapon, not once, but hundreds of times. It was hundreds, probably, it was definitely hundreds of times. I was approaching from the 78 freeway to the 5 south. And they started the directed energy weapon. It hit my car. It was called industrial heating. It caused my legs to vibrate for a very long time as I merged south. I said, this can't possibly go on for much longer. My legs were shaking, shaking, shaking. It went on for 2 to 3 miles and I could not accelerate. Then it stopped finally. I think they ran out of power or whatever. And then it continued when I got further down the freeway. And it continued off and on all the way to work. I got to work. I was so shaken. It was terrible. Your legs feel like they're going to fall off of you. And here is what Stevenson, Robert L. Stevenson, who they use in the War Powers Act as your president who doesn't want the tribunal. This is what they use. That she was illegally moving her vehicle from that near strike, saying it did not strike my car. I had to take the next Sunday off to make sure that my shielding arrived in order to drive to work the following week. And this was for verifying that there were indeed terrorists in Syria that were given gas masks 24 hours in advance. And those were Turkish terrorists that Dick Cheney found out. Dick Cheney sent them in there. And he did not want us to fight them. We wanted to fight them. And we were hoping that Russia would come along. And that's where the Russian side entered in. And Russia was too blackmailed behind the back with Israel. And that's why they killed the Russian ambassador. It was Israel that was operating Putin. And so we need our war crimes tribunal here in America. I became the president. I do intend to serve and preside over the war crimes tribunal. At least that would give me something to do. I have worked really hard for the American voter. We keep our gold standard, and our money back is to be delivered post-tribunal and to every American, hopefully, and every Russian, as well as every Chinese person. We need to disband the Commonwealth once the jails fall, and we know they have been falling. So it's time for our war crimes tribunal. And yes, the British, they did admit it. They were behind the war crimes, not anything else. So God willing, we finally get that going. It could happen, finally. And we get our $840 trillion back. And that is our goal as Americans, is to be able to audit the Pentagon and never to be struck in your car while driving because you choose to validate what someone says. I don't like printing bullshit. I'm not a bullshit artist. I'm not someone who would lie. I would never have lied. When I called Stevenson, I did call him and tell him my car was struck. I thought he was an honest cop. And that brings me up to my second point here. I thought Stevenson was an honest cop. I did not expect him to do that. And it is sad here in our community. Our resources have been stolen by the War Powers Act, used illegally. And we do expect just compensation from Congress. And I am going to send this video to Mike Levin because we do not want to be raped here by Dick Cheney. During this entire time that this case has gone on, Dick Cheney has used our community here and this War Powers Act in order to install harmful weaponry, to conduct a land grab that was criminal, and basically to conduct criminal activity. And at times, law enforcement has been charged for surveillance and monitoring. And why was law enforcement charged? How much did Stevenson, how much did this one falsification, I'm going to read it again, illegally moving her car from that near strike? I was driving at the time. I was passing I was just before the Nordal exit. As I was driving, it struck my car. And then it continued to strike. It was like they pushed a weapon on a beam that just industrially heated my entire front end, and I could not hit the accelerator. And it was very painful to continue to hit the accelerator. I had to reduce speed in order to stop, to maintain control of my vehicle. I did it for miles. And then I continued to drive. I continued to drive because I wanted to fight whoever this was behind the terrorism. And we need to take our budget back. It's our budget that needs to be taken back from the terrorists that lie within our government. And that is my goal. As the president I became, or the president that is running, it is me and millions of Americans who want to take our country back from terrorists who have sat in the background for a very long time, waiting to strike and lie. And we need to take our budget back here. The police and the sheriff's department should charge Dick Cheney for this lie. They have the footage, I suspect, somewhere. And they can use that to press charges today. Because one thing I know, I purchased shielding and I continued to drive to work. And after that following week, they continued to strike the next weekend. I had to shove tampons up my ass in order for the electrical connections not to be made. And so I continued to drive. It was very painful. And they continued to run terrorism. And it was criminal what was done. I provided my testimony, and that is why Flynn took my paperwork. It was criminal for Mike Flynn to take my deposition testimony, and I do want to get to the bottom of why Flynn has my deposition testimony, because he cost California homeowners if my depositions were not filed correctly. This directed energy weapons strike, I suspect, may be the reasoning behind it. And you know what? It is not wrong for Americans to campaign for everyone to fight terrorism. When people are naive, I'll admit I was naive. I wanted the terrorism over and caught. I wanted us to win. And I wanted us never to be afraid. The one thing I don't like is people playing on our fears every day. Is it Israel that's playing on our fears every day? Shouldn't we take a look at that? We actually outed, and it was nice. We found out that the name Israel came from extraterrestrials. And there was hope in Israel to change the name to Middle East. Oh gosh, I apologize. But there was hope for that. Wouldn't you rather have a country named after something really cool and historical and not after the name that some extraterrestrials gave to a country or a place that they put in to harm us? And that's really what the name Israel means. And that's what the true meaning is. I like the name that Ehud Olmert had. I apologize, but this was really terrible to me yesterday when I found out that he lied. Because when you believe in a cop, it's like if you think that you were an informant, honestly, for many years, and you served as an informant, and then for someone to lie about somebody hurting you. It was terrible. And then I thought this morning too, did Duff use that to kill sailors and service members with Paul Allen downtown and cause the explosion of the destroyer where they threw hundreds of service members off? Did they do that? Did they kill all those people because Stevenson lied? Why did they have to do it? Why did they have to lie? How many people died because of this lie? How many? How many of our service members that wanted to fight? How much money was spent? We need to take down Dick Cheney. Have a good day.